Good morning and welcome to Tuesday's edition of 10 with Tom. Good to see everybody on this Tuesday morning. We're going to be a little lighter today. And so I want to start off with some fun and a story. But as we tie it all together, our topic today is cooler heads prevail. And I think we understand that that means that in the midst of chaos that calm people can bring stability and leadership and get people together to talk. Yesterday we saw an example of that when George Floyd's brother spoke to a crowd and said, it's time to be about peace. We want to continue to march for justice. We want to continue to march for change, but we need to do that peacefully. That's a cooler head, and hopefully cooler heads prevail in the situation. But the cooler head I'm talking about today is my own, and it's not what you're thinking. We were coming back from a mission trip many years ago. I was with a group from Pennsylvania, and we made a stop at a place called Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore. It's near Michigan City, Indiana, and it's on the shores of Lake Michigan. And we were looking for a nice, relaxing day at Lake Michigan, chance to relax after a great mission trip. And so when you get close to Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore, you have no idea you're near Lake Michigan at all because you can't see it. There's trees everywhere. And when you finally pull into the parking lot, you're in the woods. And you're like, where in the world is the lake? And so you get out of the van and you see sand. And not just a little bit of sand, but a mountain of sand. Sand, you're looking straight up at this mountain of sand. And so there are two ways to get to the lake from the parking lot. One is to walk a trail that goes around this mountain of sand. The other way is to hike up the sand. Now, when you get there, you're going to want to climb the sand. It's just the cool thing to do. But we've seen, we had this big thing with the astronauts blasting off last weekend. And if you've ever seen footage of the astronauts walking on the moon, they don't walk normally. They take a step and a kind of leap into the air and they bounce, and then they take another step. And it's kind of like the moonwalk inflatables that we have when you're in the bounce house and you're just kind of jumping around. Well, climbing the dunes is a lot like trying to walk on another planet. On the way up, you take a step up and then you slide back down. And you take another step up and you slide back down. So each step you take up the mountain nets you about 2 inches. And so it takes about a half an hour to climb all the way to the top. It just seems to take forever. And so by the time my group climbed to the top of the dune, I was already on the other side, and I had all their coolers, or I had the drinks, all their drinks in the cooler, and we were good to go. But when you finally make it to the top, and it's a struggle, and you're like, am I ever going to get there? When you finally get there, you have a spectacular view of Lake Michigan that you didn't even know was there until you reached the pinnacle. And so it's well worth the climb. And so we went and we had a good day there, and when the day was over, it was time to go back, and nobody volunteered to take the cooler. Now, the cooler wasn't as heavy as it was before because people had been drinking soda and stuff all day. And we had people that were carrying the trash bags with empties in it, but there was still some stuff in the cooler. And nobody wanted to take it, and I thought, doggone it, I'm not going to miss going down the other side. Because going down the other side is like a moonwalk. Whereas it takes so long to get to the top, it takes about 8 steps to get from the top to the bottom when you're coming down the steep side, back toward the parking lot. And so what you do is you take your first step, you kind of lean out, and you kind of jump, and you take your first step. When your right foot hits, you kind of push off, and you go and wait for your left foot to hit. And you're covering yards with every step. And so you just kind of keep bouncing your way to the bottom. And so everybody's already on their way down, and I've got this cooler, and so I've got it up tight against me as I take my first step. And my momentum, of course, is leaning downward, so the cooler comes out a little bit. Then I take my second step, and the cooler's out a little further. By the third step, the cooler's out like this. The next step, the cooler is now starting downward momentum toward my feet. And by the fifth step, the cooler lid had flown open, my feet were above my head, and I did a vertical smash into the inside of the cooler. Now, when I did that, my body became like a cartoon. Just arms and legs flailing everywhere, cans of soda going everywhere, some of them exploding as they fell, and I'm rolling down the mountain, and the cooler's rolling down this mountain of sand. And when I get to the bottom, I'm dazed, and there's a little kid standing there with his mom, and he looks at her and he goes, Mom, did you see that guy? That was awesome. And I'm sure the people who saw it, it was great. If somebody would have had a camera, it might have been worth $10,000 on America's Funniest Home Videos. Unfortunately for me, nobody did. But I ended up with a concussion out of it from slamming my head into that and then falling down the hill. And so how do cooler heads prevail in a situation like that? My cooler head, all right, was hurting. I had a concussion. But I did learn a lesson in this, and this is where the cooler head prevailing part actually comes out of it. When you're on a mission trip, you're there to serve. And when you're a leader on a mission trip, you're there to serve not only on the trip, but you're there to serve the people that are going with you. And so it was very, very natural for me as the leader to carry the cooler around and let everybody else have the fun time. And I had been there before, and so it wasn't that big of a deal for me. But coming back, I didn't want to miss the experience. What I should have done as the leader is continue to serve and carry it around like I ordinarily would have. But instead, I tried to be a little selfish and make sure that I got in on the fun too, and I wound up getting hurt. I lost sight of what my goal was. And so a lot of times in life, we start on a project and then we lose our sight. We lose our way and we get lost. Or something happens that knocks us off track. And for the rest of the trip, I now put an unnecessary burden on the rest of my leaders because I wasn't allowed to drive the rest of the trip. I was basically a useless passenger. I couldn't contribute anything. When we went somewhere the next day, I had to lay in the hotel and sleep all day. So it just wasn't a great experience from that point on. And so I learned that it's so important for us to stay focused when we're out serving. When you've got a mission, stick to it. And so that's my cooler head prevailing story. And so I hope you learned something from that and keep serving with all your heart. Now, what kind of service things do we have coming up this summer? Well, we still don't know. We're still looking for opportunities. I do know one thing that we do every year. During Vacation Bible School, we are raising funds and we are collecting items for our local schools. That's not going to change because the students in the schools that we serve still have needs. They still need clothing. They still need school supplies. They still need shoes. And they need things that miscellaneously come up throughout the year. So we're going to continue to do that. Now, with VBS, not going to happen the way we're used to it happening. We're going to have to be creative about how we do that. And maybe it's something when you go to Target or when you go to Walmart or when you go to the dollar store. Pick up a few extra school supplies and bring them into the church when you can, and we'll just accumulate that stuff. The church is going to continue, thanks to your generosity through offerings. We're going to be able to meet our missions requests, which means that each of those schools that we support is going to get a $1,000 check, but they also rely on the items that we can bring. So we want to encourage you to do that, even though we're not having VBS in a big way this year. Don't let us lose sight of what our mission is with VBS, and that's serving in our community. Will there be other opportunities to serve this summer? We don't know yet. We're looking for them. We haven't found them yet, and there are issues that we've talked about as far as how do we transport with social distancing and all that. So we're still trying to work through all of those things. But when you have the opportunity, put your whole heart into it. And as we've said before, you can serve your neighbors. You can do things for those who need things around you. Look for those opportunities and stay focused on them. The last thing I want to say today before we let you guys go is that our youth leadership team is meeting this Sunday. And we've been mentioning this now for a couple of weeks, but this Sunday from 2 to 3:30, we're going to be getting together and talking about some things that we do to grow in our own leadership skills, but also we're going to be doing some very practical stuff about how is youth group going to look when we get restarted June 14th. So we're going to be putting all that together and trying to figure out some ideas for what comes in the weeks and months ahead. And so if you'd like to be a part of that, be sure and let Will or myself know, and we'll get you all the information on that. But that's this Sunday from 2 to 3:30. And of course, we do have Youth Bible Study at both services on Sunday, so we hope to see you as a part of that as well. So have a wonderful Tuesday. I love you guys, and we'll see you again real soon.